Early June, 1876. The Valley of the Greasy Grass, Montana Territory. The air is thick with the smoke of 1,000 cooking fires, the smell of curing hides, and the sharp scent of sagebrush crushed underfoot. From the bluffs above, the valley floor is not a camp, it is a nation. Thousands of teepees, Lakota, Cheyenne, Arapaho, are arranged in 6 great concentric circles. This is the largest gathering of free native peoples the continent has ever seen, and it is an act of open defiance. They are all here. The brilliant Oglala warrior mystic, Crazy Horse, the formidable Hunkpapa strategist, Gaul, but the spiritual and political center of this defiant world is one man, Thathanka Iotake. Sitting Bull. He is not a general, he is a Wichashawakan, a holy man, and he is staring at the sun, preparing for a sacrifice. This encampment is a direct rejection of an ultimatum from the United States government. They are all hostiles now. They know an army is coming. The only questions are when and from where. They are a massive target, and the tension is unbearable. They do not just need a leader. They need a miracle. They need a sign from the great mystery, Wakantanka. This gathering was not a war party. It was a desperate stand for survival, and its fate would be decided not by scouts, but by a vision. A prophecy of impossible sacrifice, paid in blood, that foretold one of the most shocking and complete military disasters in American history. By the end of this documentary, you will witness the agonizing ritual that predicted the Battle of the Little Bighorn, and understand why, for the thousands gathered at the Greasy Grass, Custer's arrival was not a surprise. It was a destiny. Section 1. The Gathering Storm. The year 1876 dawned as a death knell for the Free Plains. The Grant administration, frustrated by its failure to force the Lakota and Cheyenne onto designated reservations, had issued an ultimatum. All non-treaty Indians were to report to their agencies by January 31st or be declared hostile and hunted by the U.S. Army. It was an impossible order, issued in the dead of winter. It was not a negotiation, it was a declaration of war. As the snows melted, the hostile bands did not move toward the agencies. They moved toward each other. They fled the soldiers under General George Crook, who struck a Cheyenne camp on the Powder River in March and began to converge on the traditional buffalo hunting grounds. This was not a flight, it was a mobilization. They came from every direction. Oglala Lakota under Crazy Horse, Hunkpapa Lakota following Gaul and Sitting Bull, Miniconjou, Sans Arc, Blackfeet Lakota. They were joined by defiant bands of northern Cheyenne under Two Moons and Lame White Man, and even a small group of Arapaho. By early June, they had settled here, in the fertile valley of the Little Bighorn, a place the Lakota called the Greasy Grass. The sheer scale of the encampment was staggering. It stretched for miles along the riverbank. It was a living, breathing city of over 7,000 people, perhaps 2,000 of whom were warriors. But this unprecedented unity was also an unprecedented vulnerability. A village this large could not hide. It could not move quickly. It had defied the United States government, and now it sat, waiting. The atmosphere was thick with apprehension. Scouts rode out daily, scanning the horizons for the telltale dust clouds of the Wasatchew, the white soldiers. They knew General Terry was marching from the east. They knew General Crook was reforming to the south. They were the nut, and the crackers were closing in. In this moment of profound anxiety, the people turned not to the war chiefs, but to the holy man. Sitting Bull. He was 45 years old, a man of immense spiritual gravity. His authority came not from battle, though he was a proven warrior, but from his connection to the Wakan, the sacred. He understood that to defeat the Wasatchew army, they needed more than courage. They needed more than numbers. They needed divine certainty. They needed Wakantanka to choose a side. And so, as the moon grew full, Sitting Bull announced he would perform the most sacred and agonizing ritual known to his people, the sun dance, the Wiwangyang Wachipi. He would offer his own body as a sacrifice, a plea for a vision that would show them the path to survival. Section 2. The Offering. The decision silenced the camp. The Sundance was not a festival. It was a profound, personal ordeal, undertaken only at times of greatest crisis. It was a desperate plea for power, for pity from the universe. And Sitting Bull's would be one of singular devotion. A sacred lodge was constructed, its center marked by a towering cottonwood tree, the Wakan pole, which represented the connection between the earth and the sky. This was the center of the world. The drums began, a slow, relentless heartbeat that would anchor the dancers to reality. The entire nation gathered, forming a vast circle around the lodge, their faces a mixture of awe and fear. This was not a spectacle. It was a communion. Sitting Bull was prepared. He was purified in a sweat lodge, his mind clear and focused. He stepped into the circle, his upper body bare. He was not alone. His adopted brother, Jumping Bull, stood beside him, holding a sharpened awl and a knife. The sacrifice was about to begin. Sitting Bull raised his left arm. He locked his eyes on the sacred pole. He would not cry out. He would not flinch. This was his wopila, his offering. Jumping Bull grasped a small fold of skin on Sitting Bull's arm. He pierced it with the awl, lifted it, and sliced it off with the knife. The first piece of flesh fell to the ground. Blood welled up, crimson against his skin. Then he did it again. And again. He worked his way from the wrist to the shoulder, a meticulous, agonizing pattern of sacrifice. The only sounds were the thud of the drum and the sharp, high shriek of eagle-bone whistles blown by the other dancers. The crowd watched in reverent silence. This was the price of a vision. When the left arm was finished, a map of raw, bleeding wounds, Sitting Bull offered his right. Jumping Bull continued his work. 10 pieces, 20, 50. The sun was hot, and the blood began to flow freely, painting his arms, his chest, his leggings. Still, Sitting Bull stood motionless, his gaze locked forward. He was offering his pain directly to Wakan Tanka. The count reached 100 pieces of his own flesh, cut away and given to the earth. He was lightheaded, his body slick with blood and sweat. But the first part of the ordeal was over. He was purified. He was empty. He was ready to receive the vision. Now the dance itself began. He was tethered to the sacred pole by a long, rawhide rope, pierced through the muscles of his back or chest. But Sitting Bull's dance was different. He would dance unbound, freestanding, staring at the sun itself. For the Lakota, the sun, Angpetuwi, was the most powerful physical manifestation of the great mystery. He raised his Wakan shield, his face turned upward. He began the slow, shuffling step, his gaze fixed on the blinding white disk in the sky. Back and forth, back and forth. The drumbeat pounded, the whistles shrieked. He would dance, he would not eat, he would not drink. He would only stare into the face of God until it gave him an answer. Section 3. The Vision of the Falling Soldiers. The sun climbed to its zenith, a relentless white-hot eye. The heat in the valley was oppressive, the air shimmering. Dust kicked up by the dancers caked the blood on Sitting Bull's arms. The pain from his wounds was a constant, throbbing fire. But he did not look away. His focus was absolute. This was a battle of will, a test of endurance designed to shatter the barrier between the physical world and the spirit world. Hour after hour he shuffled back and forth. The drums were a physical force, a heartbeat pounding against his ribs. The eagle-bone whistles were a piercing cry, pulling his spirit upward. His body screamed for water, for shade, for release. His vision blurred. The sun was no longer a distant star. It was a burning hole that threatened to consume him. The first day passed, the sun set, and the exhausted dancers rested. But Sitting Bull took no food, no water. His ordeal was not over. He spent the night in prayer, his body aching, his mind hovering in a state of pained exhaustion. At dawn, the drums resumed. He rose. He was weaker now, dehydrated, his body ravaged. But his spirit was hardening. He lifted his gaze once more to the east, meeting the sun as it broke the horizon. And he danced. The second day was a pure, transcendent agony. The world dissolved. There was no camp, no people, no valley. There was only the sun, the drum, and the pain. He was dancing on the edge of consciousness. His movements became automatic, his mind detached. He was pushing his physical form to the absolute breaking point, compelling Wakantanka to notice his sacrifice. And Wakantanka answered, sometime near midday on the second day, as he stared, unblinking, into the blinding core of the sun, his body finally gave out. His legs buckled. He collapsed backward, falling to the earth, unconscious. The drums stopped. The whistles fell silent. A heavy, anxious hush fell over the entire encampment. Attendants rushed to his side. He was not just asleep. He was in a trance. He was gone. They carried his limp body to a teepee and laid him on a buffalo robe, carefully washing the blood and dust from his arms. They waited. For nearly a full day he lay in the lodge, motionless, traveling in the spirit world. When he finally awoke, he was weak, his voice a hoarse whisper. But his eyes were clear, and they burned with a terrifying clarity. He motioned for his uncles and the other chiefs to gather. He had seen it. He described the vision. He told them he had heard a voice from the sky. "I looked," he whispered, "and I saw soldiers, as numerous as grasshoppers." A chill ran through the lodge. This was their greatest fear. But Sitting Bull held up a hand. The vision was not finished. "They were falling," he said, his voice gaining strength. "They were falling from the sky, and they were falling upside down." He paused, letting the image settle. They had no ears, and their hats were falling off. They were falling right into our camp. Section 4. The fulfillment at the greasy grass. The meaning of the vision was instant and electric. Soldiers without ears were soldiers who would not listen, who would not heed the warnings of their scouts, who were deaf to reason. Soldiers with their hats falling off were men in chaos, their formations broken, their discipline gone. And soldiers falling upside down, they were dead soldiers. This was not a vision of a desperate, pitched battle. It was a vision of a result. Wakantanka was not warning them of an attack. He was promising them a victory. The soldiers would be delivered to them, a gift from the heavens, falling like helpless grasshoppers directly into their hands. The news ripped through the 6 great camp circles like a prairie fire. The change in morale was total. The apprehension and fear that had haunted the massive village evaporated, replaced by a cold, supernatural certainty. The Wasichu were coming, yes, but Wakantanka had already granted the victory. Their sacred duty was now simple, to be the instrument of the prophecy. Sitting Bull added one crucial warning. "These soldiers are a gift." He told the people, "We must kill them, but we must not take their guns, their horses, or any of their possessions. The victory must be pure. We must not pollute this sacred gift with looting." The prophecy had come just in time. The village was fortified, united not just in purpose, but in spirit. They waited. The days ticked by. The massive camp moved slowly, following the herds, but it stayed together. The vision had given them the courage to remain a single, powerful fist. Then, on the morning of June 25, 1876, just days after the great dance, the scouts came racing in, their horses lathered. Wasichu were sighted, and they were coming fast. It was Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer. Long hair. He and his 7th Cavalry had been tracking them relentlessly. Custer, famously arrogant and desperate for a glorious victory, dismissed his Crow and Arikara scouts' terrified warnings about the village's impossible size. He was deaf to their counsel. He had found the hostiles, and he would strike. He divided his command, a fatal error. He sent Major Marcus Reno to attack the southern end of the village. he sent Captain Frederick Benteen on a fruitless scout to the south, and Custer himself took a battalion of 210 men on a hard ride, flanking the bluffs to the north. His plan, to charge directly through the center of the encampment, scattering the families and striking the heart of the resistance. He was planning to ride right into the camp. Reno's attack struck first. It was brutal, but the warriors, emboldened by the prophecy, did not panic. They surged from the lodges, led by Gall, and slammed into Reno's line, shattering it. The attack collapsed into a desperate, bloody rout. But to the north, Custer and his men crested the ridge. They looked down into the valley and, for the first time, understood the sheer scale of what they faced. It was too late. Thousands of warriors, described by one survivor as a black tide pouring from the village, swarmed up the slopes. Crazy Horse led a massive flanking maneuver, cutting off any chance of escape. The fight was over almost before it began. Custer's command was swarmed, his soldiers' formations breaking. They were knocked from their saddles, panicked, deaf to their officers' commands. They fell from their horses, tumbling down the dusty, sage-covered hills. They died in chaos, falling upside down, their hats lost in the fray. In less than an hour, it was over. Custer and his entire immediate command were annihilated. The soldiers, just as numerous as grasshoppers, had been delivered. Sitting Bull's great, agonizing prophecy had been fulfilled to the letter. Sitting Bull's vision is a stunning reminder that history is shaped by more than just bullets and battle plans. It is shaped by belief, by sacrifice, and by visions that can forge the will of a nation. The soldiers fell, just as he saw. What part of this incredible story of prophecy and fulfillment amazed you the most? Let us know in the comments. If you found this history as fascinating as we do, please share this video with a friend and subscribe for more essential stories.